You know, we're under a lot of stress right now. There's no question about that. And stress can cause some pretty serious issues with your health. One of the things that it can do is make you gain weight. You may be wondering, how does stress cause weight gain? I mean, what's the connection? Well, let's talk about this. First of all, let me explain to you why you would even want to lose weight in the first place. Now, there are many reasons for that, but one of the big ones is because you have a family member or maybe someone that you know that has diabetes or pre-diabetes and you do want to end up in that situation. And if you're overweight, that is a risk factor for developing diabetes. That's not the only risk factor, but it is a big one. So if you're carrying around excess body fat, you're at a much higher risk of getting diabetes than someone who is lean. And it's not just type 2 diabetes either. It can also increase your risk for type 1 diabetes, which is autoimmune in nature. But again, it's definitely true for type 2 diabetes. And what happens when you get type 2 diabetes? The cells in your body become resistant to insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks the doors to your cells so that the glucose in your bloodstream can get into the cells instead of staying out in the bloodstream. And when those doors are locked, that glucose starts to build up in your bloodstream, and that is when you are considered pre-diabetic or diabetic. But you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes by losing just 7% of your total body weight. This is according to the American Diabetes Association. They said if you lose 7% of your total body weight, you can reverse type 2 diabetes. Now, if you lose more than that, like say 10, 20, or 50 pounds, you'll probably see an even bigger improvement in your blood sugar. Okay, so let's talk about the connection between stress and weight gain. How does that work? Well, there are several different ways. First of all, when you're stressed, you have elevated levels of cortisol and other stress hormones. Cortisol is one of the main ones, and it triggers the release of sugar into your bloodstream. Your liver releases stored sugar, and that's called glucose. It releases that into the bloodstream, and at the same time, it's blocking the action of insulin. And what happens then is you have too much sugar in the bloodstream because you don't have enough insulin to unlock those doors. So that excess sugar that's floating around in your bloodstream is going to get stored as body fat. So no, one way that stress causes weight gain is through this mechanism. Okay, the second way is that stress causes you to eat more food. And of course, eating more food will cause you to gain weight. Now, that could be emotional eating, or it could be that you're just eating more because your metabolism is faster. Either way, you're going to store that as body fat. Now, another reason is that when you're stressed, you're not sleeping very well. You're either not getting enough sleep or the quality of your sleep is not very good. And there's a hormone called leptin that tells us we're full and satisfied. It tells us we're not hungry. Well, when your sleep is not very good, leptin goes down. So you're gonna start to feel hungrier the next day. And another hormone that is affected by stress and also by sleep is ghrelin. Ghrelin tells us we're hungry. We need to eat. So when we're stressed and not sleeping, ghrelin goes up. So we feel hungrier and we're less full, so we end up eating more food, which leads to weight gain. Another thing that stress can do is speed up your metabolism. If your stress is chronic, it can speed up your metabolism and you'll start to burn more calories. That sounds good, right? Yeah, but you'll also be eating more. And if you're eating more, you're probably gaining weight. All right, here's another one. When you're stressed, your adrenal glands are pumping out these stress hormones. One of them is adrenaline. Adrenaline can trigger the release of insulin from the pancreas. Remember, insulin is the key that unlocks the doors to your cells. So when you're stressed, you have a release of adrenaline that can trigger the release of insulin. And what happens when you're stressed? You're not exercising. You're sitting there, you're watching TV, you're in a stressful situation, you're not moving. And so the insulin that gets released isn't being utilized because you're not exercising. So it's just floating around in there and doing its job, which is storing that excess sugar as body fat. Then you have another stress hormone called noradrenaline. Noradrenaline increases your blood pressure. It also increases your heart rate. And what it can do is make you impulsively reach for the first food that you see. So you just grabbing something to eat without even thinking about it because you're re-stressed and that noradrenaline is just taking over. So it's making you impulsively grab the first food. You haven't really had a chance to evaluate the situation and think about what you should eat. And then you have the last stress hormone I want to talk about, and that is cortisol. Cortisol increases during times of stress, and it can actually change the shape of your body. So if you have high levels of cortisol, you're going to gain weight in the belly area and also in the upper back area. You're going to have a buffalo hump. In men, you might notice more hair growth on your upper lip or your lower jawline or other parts of your body. You might notice hair growth because this cortisol hormone is triggering a release of testosterone, which then can turn into other hormones, including DHT, which can cause hair growth in certain areas. So there are the 5 mechanisms that I wanted to talk about in this short video that explains how stress can lead to weight gain. And I think you've probably already figured this out, but the solution is to reduce your stress. Right, easy peasy. I know, but how do you do that? Well, there are many ways. One of the best ways is to exercise. Exercise can greatly help you by reducing the amount of stress that you have. Another thing is getting enough good quality sleep. Now, most people need between 7 and 2 to 8 hours of sleep. But you may need more or you may need less. It all depends on your chronotype. To find out what your chronotype is, I have a free quiz on my website. You can just type in your answers to these 6 questions and it will tell you what your chronotype is. And based on that, you'll know how much sleep you need. Another good way to reduce stress is to spend time outdoors. And I'm not talking about just walking down the street and then coming back in the house. I am talking about getting in your backyard or going to a park and just sitting in the grass and looking up at the trees, looking up at the sky, breathing in the fresh air. That can help reduce your stress. Other things you can do is take a hot bath, meditate, deep breathing exercises, yoga, tai chi. Those are all excellent ways to reduce your stress. Now, if you're enjoying my content, which I hope you are, and you're applying this knowledge to your health and you have a success, I would really appreciate you sharing your success story. So click the link down below where you can upload your success story so you can help inspire others.